Anybody ever wonder what we do with all these boxes we get from all the products that come in for review? This is what we do.
My face, this is a freaking inferno.
Yeah, that was a freaking inferno, wasn't it? Now we get all these boxes. We get so many boxes, and they kind of pile up. Right now we have something called the box room. I think you remember when I was down there in Kentucky, Wendell, we had like boxes all down the hallway, and all the employees were like, "Could you please tell him to get his boxes out of here?" I tried to like make him blend in with all of everybody else's boxes, but then they would see, like Tech Syndicate on the logo, and they'd be like, "Hold on a minute, all these boxes are not ours." They were on to me.
Now I'm gonna have to get some neon for the in-office bar and call it the box room and just put it over the door.
Wait a minute, that's actually a really good name. All right, anyway, so we have a lot of fun with the boxes, and we've got a bunch more to burn. Wish you guys were all there with us. We'd have a big Tech Syndicate bonfire. Anyway, it's about time for us to, I don't know how fire translates. I'm the worst with segues. But anyway, we're going to talk about net neutrality, and we're going to talk about net neutrality to kind of lead off the episode and get all that junk that's annoying but necessary out of the way. So, the FCC has created sort of a bunch of turmoil on the internet, and that's over sort of a new statement. They haven't actually put anything into ruling yet, and no one's actually seen what they're talking about, but apparently they've got an internet fast lane. And you could probably break this down more succinctly than I can, Wendell, so I'll let you take it away about the internet fast lane.
It's so strange. It's completely strange. So completely out of left field, the FCC is like, okay, so the context here is that they had a case, Verizon sued them and said, you can't make arbitrary rules. It was in court for like 3 years. It was lawyers throttling lawyers. It was just an epic circus of insanity. And the FCC lost. And the court said, well, you haven't classified them as telecommunications carriers. They're classified as information providers. All you got to do is reclassify them as telecommunications providers, and then you can make them follow the rules. That's fine. Just do that. And so the FCC, closed their doors, and it's almost like the Pope thing, where like the white smoke is coming out of the smokestack, and work is being done, and you play the montage music, and there's things happening. And then it's like, ding, everything's done. And then, the black smoke comes out or whatever. I don't know what the procedure is.
Burnt toast. I thought it was white smoke. I don't even remember.
Well, I don't remember how it works with the election of the Pope either. But
yeah,
some clever joke about electing the Pope in there.
Yeah, insert your own joke here.
Anyway,
sort of
they came out with and they were like, all right, we've got a thing, let's rule it. And so Chairman Tom Wheeler comes out with this thing, and he's like, we're going to have some rules for the internet fast lane. And it's like, what? I'm sorry, what? The internet? What? No. The court told you guys to reclassify these communications companies as telecommunications providers. And you've got this. And so it's taken everybody by surprise, and it doesn't make any sense. And now makes me think that the FCC is up to something sinister and thinks everyone is a moron.
Yeah, that's exactly what it seems. And some people at Netflix can really break down exactly what's going on. We've done this in several videos, and so I'll spare you guys. You guys should go watch those other videos, especially like the Comcast versus Netflix type thing. But Ken, he's the guy who is responsible for content delivery at Netflix, and he's written a really interesting blog article called "The Case Against ISP Tolls," and he's showing how the web normally works. Now, Comcast is paying several back-end providers. These are the different providers. They're sort of like the ISPs for the major companies like Tier 1 or Tier 3 and Cogent and all the others like that. And then they deliver the packets to Comcast, and we pay Comcast for access to all that sort of thing. So they really, they break it down here. It shows that Netflix really understands what's going on, which is a good thing. And it also seems like Comcast knows what's going on as well. But it's just a well-worded article. And I wish the FCC would read these sort of things, because what they're going to do with this fast lane is they're going to enable more stuff like this, where you see like, you got Netflix on the top, and they're normally going through, Cogent, Level 3, Tata, whatever, XO. But here, they're paying extra, and they're going straight through a Comcast connection. But that's not even exactly what's happening. There's some deeper evil going on here. And if you look at what's happened, Netflix has paid Comcast for faster access because Comcast was not delivering what we were paying for. So Netflix paid the bill, and then overnight, all of a sudden, magically, everything was faster. So what that tells us, as the consumers at home, like, hey, they didn't actually need to install any new infrastructure. All they had to do was stop throttling Netflix. So there in itself, we have a potential antitrust case. And you've written some letters that sort of state all these things in long form. And we have a shorter letter, too, here we can show. But I actually like the long letter for several different purposes. And you guys all should read this. It'll give you a pretty good understanding of what's going on. It'll give you a bit of an understanding of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, and it'll give you an understanding of what many people have been calling the $200 billion fraud. It's ridiculous. So the Internet Fast Lane is going to make all of this worse. And that brings me, I guess, to your new letter that everyone can share. So you wrote the one-page draft of this letter, and it's sort of like you said, the TLDR. And I'll let you go ahead and sum it up since you're the writer.
Well, there's a one-page letter.
Rewind here, right?
Yeah. There's a one-page letter on the forum on the site. So if you would like to write a letter to the FCC, we would encourage you to write a letter to the FCC. You can print it on really nice linen paper, like take it to your local office supply store. They'll print it on nice linen paper and a nice linen envelope. Actually put a stamp on it and actually mail it. Take the letter and make it your own. Put in your own introduction, your name and that sort of thing. Sign it. It will be a really good thing.
Let me give everyone a bit of advice real quick on this, because this is something that's worked for me. When you go to like your office store or something, do not buy a standard envelope. If you have envelopes at home, do not use those standard envelopes. Get like a green envelope or a gray envelope or a purple envelope, or just get some kind of ridiculous colored envelope. In the ginormous stack of mail that they get, there's going to be something green or something purple sticking out. It catches the eye, and it has worked for me so many times. People will be like, hey, I opened up your thing and read your whatever, your movie script, your idea. Hey, I got your thing. And it's like a 90% callback rate I get on things that are stuffed in colored envelopes. So anyway, I'll let you get back to what you were talking about there.
Oh, no, it's just the general etiquette of, writing a letter.
Right.
The reality here is that 5 years ago, Comcast was caught red-handed throttling BitTorrent traffic, and the FCC, blew up and was like, "We're going to stop that. We're going to have some rules." And the Comcast sued the FCC and won. The FCC lost, and the court said, "They're not telecommunications companies. They can do this. This is allowed." And the same thing happened recently with Verizon. The FCC lost. That was the recent loss that you guys all heard about. And here we have they're doing the same thing again. They're drafting arbitrary rules that don't make any sense and don't actually serve any effective purpose, that have ambiguous language like we're going to make sure that it's good because we're the FCC. That's literally what's in there.
Well, here's what they said. They said that Tom Wheeler came out and he's like, "Listen, guys, we are going to do everything we can to ensure net neutrality and all that sort of thing." And he said that he said his goals are to have an enforceable open internet. Now, in his, in their different rules that they're trying to draft up, they use terms like, just like you were saying, really open terms like fast lane. And they said that they will, they said that the fast lane is going to be permitted as long as ISPs charge, quote unquote, commercially reasonable rates. That's the kind of language. Commercially reasonable.
What does it even mean? What does it even mean? It is absolutely meaningless. They're setting up the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And here we are for round 3. They're going to do this for round 3. And if ISPs don't sue, unless the FCC reclassifies these companies, that is point number 1. That is action number 1. They need to do that. And anything that's not that is putting the cart before the horse. So to that end, there's a one-page letter on the Tech Syndicate forums. Just go there, look for it, copy, paste, send. It would be more effective if you send it as a paper email. But you can read that. You can read the longer version, too, for a little bit more background and a little bit more of the 96 Telecommunications Act and why it's bad specifically in this case. But that's all we're going to say about it in the video. Go look at it, check it out. It's important. If you're not in America, it's going to affect you too. Just give it time.
Yeah, I mean, really, the bottom line here is that the courts told the FCC 2 times, like you just said in both those court cases, to reclassify the ISPs as, how did you word it here? How did they word it? As telecommunications companies under Title II, and they still haven't done that. And if they do that, they will be able to ensure all these beautiful, beautiful things that Tom Wheeler says that the FCC wants to ensure. So
if these
I guess we could
communications companies are classified as Title II, they can do all they want with the fast lane stuff. Doesn't even matter. That'll be different services offered by the ISP. Then it's not evil. But because it seems like the FCC is sort of sidestepping this whole reclassification thing, it makes me think they're up to no good, and it makes me start to question it. It's like, well, Tom Wheeler, he did work for the cable industry. He was a lobbyist. I'm really starting to question the integrity here.
A lobbyist? You mean a legal briber? Pretty much. Now,
so it's just like, this doesn't even make sense. The other thing in the longer letter is also that, at the end of the day, the FCC, a lot of smart guys, they're not the ones to be making these rules.
Yes, very important to talk about that.
Really only one group that can do that, and that's the Internet Engineering Task Force, the IETF. And I don't even know that they would touch something like this with a 10-foot pole. But that's a whole other thing. I mean, it would be like your grandma trying to come up with, like, the National Electric Code. I mean, do you really want your grandma coming up with the National Electric Code? Doesn't even make sense.
My grandma was pretty damn smart.
Well, I'll have you know my grandma was a certified electrician.
All right. We kind of called something that would be a byproduct of all this. And I'm not sure if I said it or if you said it, but, if Netflix has to give Comcast money, we said, well, here's what's going to happen. Netflix is going to raise their prices, so therefore, what's really happening is we are giving the ISPs more money because we're paying, in essence, for the extra money that Netflix has to give to Comcast. Coming out of our pockets now because the prices for Netflix are going up. Now, that's only going to be for new subscribers, but that's a direct result of them having to give Comcast money, and that's exactly what's going to happen, if this fast lane nonsense occurs, because then all the big companies are going to have to give the ISPs money, and the smaller companies are not going to have any money to give them, and so they're not going to get any good service, and no one's going to want to go to their website. It's very basic.
I really don't understand why no one in power, and even some of the commenters that have showed up. I mean, when you have an internet service plan, you're buying bytes. You're buying bytes from your ISP. It is as simple as that. If you look in the Comcast terms of service, there's a 250 gigabyte cap. Now, whether or not that's enforced is a moot point. The terms that you've agreed to is a 250 gigabyte cap. I have paid for a certain amount of bytes. If I elect to spend those on Netflix, that's my business. That's not Comcast's business. And it is as simple as that. There is literally no more complex an explanation than that. I want to spend my bytes on Netflix. Netflix is a popular service. More people are spending more of their bytes on Netflix, but it's bytes that they have purchased and have the right to use. And Comcast sort of going and forcing Netflix to do this backroom behind-the-scenes deal, to me, is torturous interference and an antitrust issue.
Speaking of antitrust, guess who's creating their own version of Netflix? AT&T is getting together with an internet media entertainment company called the Charon Group. I believe it's the Charon or the Sharon Group. Now they're throwing $500 million at creating a direct competitor to Netflix. Now, like you just said, conflict of interest. Here's the problem. AT&T is an ISP, and they're also going to be offering a service that is a direct competitor to Netflix. So they are just going to, greed is going to incentivize them to give their service a way better connection than Netflix. And if the fast lane happens, guess what's going to happen? Their service is going to be blazing fast.
This already happened with AT&T Wireless. It wasn't a Netflix-like service, but AT&T Wireless has a thing where you can watch, it's like the top 10 shows in America or something. AT&T Wireless has a plan you can put on your phone and stream TV shows from AT&T to your phone. Well, some guy, it was like $5 or $10 a month. It wasn't much. And some guy signed up for that and was like, well, I don't really like that. Switched to Netflix, and then he ran up some just crazy Netflix bill. It was like 20 or 30 gigabytes. Took him to court, sued him, and won. And the judge said, well, look, data's data. You're delivering your television shows on the AT&T network as data. And you're delivering the Netflix television shows as data. You have charged this person many times the amount that you charged for your own data. That's an anti-competitive behavior, and this guy's entitled to damages. Actual court case, and AT&T lost. And the FCC had nothing to do with that. The FCC was asleep at the helm when that happened.
Well, I mean, I guarantee you, regardless of past court cases or anything, if AT&T creates a Netflix competitor, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that the service runs better than Netflix. And it'll be completely legal if all this FCC nonsense happens, and if the FCC does not reclassify, companies like AT&T as, what's the term I'm looking for? I've already forgotten. Reclassifies them as
Telecommunications providers.
Yeah. Yep.
So now, meanwhile, while this is happening in America, a lot of this has already happened in Australia too. So sorry, guys, didn't know it was this bad down there, and plus their connectivity was terrible. But meanwhile, this is happening in America. Other companies are looking at this and saying, "Oh, that's a good idea. We should do that." And the EU is sort of going in the opposite direction. The EU but it's a little weird because some countries in the EU actually had more stringent net neutrality stuff than the new net neutrality stuff that's been enacted. So in some ways it's a step backwards, and in some ways it's a step forward. But this is also happening in the EU, and it's a big mess there too, because the internet is an insanely lucrative thing, and everybody wants to control it. But the thing that makes it lucrative thus far has been that these companies have not had it under control, and no one seems to get that.
Brazil is ahead of a huge chunk of the world. In Brazil, they reclassified the internet as a public utility, and they have essentially created a Bill of Rights for the digital age. There they are on stage. There's the president right there of Brazil. Why are they so far ahead of us in this regard? I mean, you always hear, in America, it's kind of a stereotype that every country in South America is extremely corrupt, but this does not smack of corruption. This smacks of common sense to me. I don't know.
Well, this type of connectivity, you've got a really strong competitive and economic advantage. I mean, Romania that we mentioned, and a lot of people wrote in from Romania and was like, yeah, it is like $20 to $40 a month or euro or whatever. And that is a very strong competitive and economic advantage. I really don't understand why our lawmakers are not looking at this, and the situation that companies are creating is cutting our nose off to spite our face. It is that situation. It really needs to be dealt with quickly and swiftly before it's too late.
Well, Google, they created Google Fiber. And the real point, I believe, behind Google Fiber was not to make Google an ISP, even though they're sort of embracing it now. I believe that they were trying to create some competition. And so AT&T has decided they're going to try to create some competition for Google Fiber by investing in they're looking at like 21 major areas, possibly 100. So, and they're thinking about rolling out their own fiber. Now, here's the interesting thing here. They've said a few things about fiber. They're going to be rolling out a service that's like 300 megabits per second. And in the service terms, it says it's going to upgrade to fiber, like gigabit fiber sometime in the future. But you'll get it as soon as we've got it for the same price. They're doing that. And then here's the other interesting thing that we reported on a few weeks ago. AT&T, in their meeting to shareholders, they made a ton of money, right? They just profits are way up. And they assured their shareholders that none of these profits would be used to upgrade infrastructure. So they're not going to, quote unquote, be wasting any of that money installing new lines. So how is this going to work? Are they going to get the cities to pay for it? Are they going to get, who's going to be paying for the upgrades here if you've told your shareholders that you don't really plan on using any of that profit for, upgrading services?
There was a blogger
that's what I want to know.
That coined the term fiber to the press release. And that is literally what this is. They're running fiber to the press release. So the reality is that new subdivision and new construction is already wired for fiber. And this announcement is tantamount to, we're going to turn up the fiber to the capacity that it already is, but we're not going to rewire anything that's new. That's what they've stated to shareholders anyway. They're saying we're not going to have capital expenditures. We're not going to roll out new infrastructure. So this is a smokescreen. This is intended to mislead. It is intended to misrepresent. It may be targeted at the public. It may be targeted toward lawmakers. And so lawmakers can say, oh, yeah, this is encouraging, innovation. This is encouraging competition. But make no mistake, AT&T is slow and lethargic and has no intent of upgrading their infrastructure.
And I got some hate mail this week, Wendell. Someone wrote in and they were like, listen, man, I know you really like Google and you really like Netflix, but seriously, they're companies and they're all about their bottom line. They don't care about people. and you need to stop being so like sympathetic towards those companies. And you know what? I can agree with you to a certain extent. Here's the deal: I understand their companies. I understand that they may be sociopathic in nature because they're all about making money and getting bigger. However, I do agree with a lot of the points that Netflix and Google have been making recently and historically, and I believe that they are acting in a way that is, they're playing the long game, and they realize that the long game is not to screw the public, and that's just the way I see it right now. AT&T seems to be playing the short game. They always want to know how they can make the most money right now, and that's the way Comcast is. They're like, how can we make the most money right now and buy up all the competition so that there's no one else alive? They've got a very... I don't know, it's almost like they have to have every toy in the playground, and they don't care if everybody goes home. It'll just be them sitting there by themselves. I don't think Google's that way. They want everyone to be okay. They know that if every other company and every other consumer out there is, fat and happy, then it's going to be good for them. And that's kind of the way I see it. But I don't see AT&T as seeing that same picture.
I suspect that if these companies, like even if Google has nefarious intent, if these companies continue to play this game, that there will be a groundswell of support from people like us the viewers, us the nerds, us the super nerds, I don't know, whatever our ranks are, we will rise up and we will deploy our own infrastructure. Let's see a for-profit company compete with volunteer nerds that are out to wire their counties and wire their cities and wire their states. We will absolutely destroy them.
Let's talk about this when I get down there to Kentucky. I'm going to be going down there in a couple of weeks, so I think I just told the snipers where to go.
Well, the reality is that they see this coming, and they're trying to make it very difficult for people for nonprofit companies and independent companies to access the infrastructure and easements and things like that to run the wiring and do the wiring. So this is some of the friction and the cries of foul where the private companies are saying, cities can't help, another organization do whatever. But right. I think that there are going to be enough of us that this will happen. Who knows? We might petition Google to say, look, you want to roll out Google Fiber everywhere? Give us the formula for the secret sauce, and we will organize a social organization that is a not-for-profit company designed to roll out everywhere simultaneously. If we did that and Google lended its expertise to the organizations that are sort of doing the grassroots fiber thing, we could take over the universe overnight before Comcast and Time Warner and Netflix and other ISP companies knew what hit them.
We do that and get an internet bill of rights, and it would be a beautiful thing. Let's talk about SSL, because there's been a few different problems with SSL, namely the Heartbleed backdoor, or a Heartbleed, a bug, or I don't know, what do they call it? It's just a security vulnerability. So the OpenBSD founder, he has decided to create LibreSSL. It's a fork of OpenSSL. And the reason I'm even bringing this up is because, well, for one thing, the website that he's created for this has been specifically designed to piss off, what does he say? This page has scientifically been designed to annoy web hipsters. Let's look at the page here. Comic Sans, look at that. Oh, blinking text on the page. And he said, hey, listen, if you guys donate, maybe we'll get rid of the Comic Sans. But right now they're just trying to raise some money for it. Money is mostly going to be coming from nonprofits and that sort of thing, or just anyone who's, I don't know, BSD, Linux. I'm not sure where the money's all going to be coming from, but they're going to create their own version of SSL, so that could be interesting. And he also said that it looks like the OpenSSL as it currently is just throw it out and start over. That's basically what he said, because he looked at the code and he said there are thousands of lines of legacy code that are completely irrelevant nowadays, and some of those could be vulnerable as well. Some of the stuff is just there. Some of it's redundant. So he said that it is completely bloated and it's just pretty much old news, time to start over from scratch.
OpenSSL is fantastically ancient, and this is probably a good move, but it'll probably be a year or two before we decide that, oh, this is really good. As a general rule, you can really tell the maturity of a programmer, though, because generally, like the really seasoned, like hardcore 30-year veterans would never do something like this. Even the most terrible, terrible code, they would just refactor it and clean it up and convince themselves that what they were changing was logically identical to what it was before. It was just more organized. And so I'm not telling them how to do their job, but I would think that something like that might be better than just throwing it out. But maybe effectively that's what they're doing.
Well, you know, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, they're not ready to throw it out. In fact, they're actually going to be throwing some money at it. $3.6 million they're going to be giving to OpenSSL and other open source initiatives. But the key here is that they're all going to be working together for something that's beneficial for all of us. And I think it's really great to see Microsoft throwing money at open source, especially when it's, you know, something that has a lot to do with the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation, they're not directing what happens with this, but they're sort of overseeing all of it, you know what I mean? Let's see, has a new project is called the Core Infrastructure Initiative, and it was formed by the Linux Foundation. So I think that's really cool. The money all is going into a pot, and then from there they figure out what it should be thrown at.
Well, the coolest thing here is the community is rising up to deal with the situation, and they're getting commercial support. They're getting really good commercial support. That is really good, and that's a really good sign that the open source community is overall pretty healthy, because Google and a lot of these other companies, to a much lesser extent Microsoft, depend on these open source projects.
So anyway, it's really good to see exactly that, these big companies supporting open source. That's kind of the way Linux works anyway. That's the way a lot of companies like Red Hat have made their living, by creating something that's open source and really awesome, and then getting commercial support to either maintain it or create new stuff for it. You know, it's pretty cool. Or do weird things with it. Anyway, this is a follow-up on last week. We talked about our technology and the drama that was going on. And someone posted this. This is actually very helpful. It is a list of subreddits that you can use instead of our technology. In fact, I love our futurology, and we'll get into that some in the hardware segment coming up in the next edition of the Tech. And Tech News is a good one. I like Tech News probably better than our technology. So, you know, Wendell, it just struck me. All of those things that were, you know, all the different things that were censored on our technology, that's basically the tech. The tech was completely censored on our technology.
You know, it is funny, but a lot of the stuff that we talked about are the articles that they censored, and it doesn't make sense because, you know, they're articles that people that would be on our technology would be interested in. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it is really weird. All right, let's talk about Kim.com for just a moment, shall we? Kim.com, it looks like he's going to be getting back his stuff. He is so pumped up, standing in front of his cars, being like, what's up? I'm getting all my stuff back in New Zealand. And the case against him is crumbling. And not only that, now that the case is crumbling, who's suing him? The MPAA and the RIAA.
Well, so...
Go ahead. This is hilarious.
It's complicated. Okay, so this was on Tech Daily.
Yeah.
What was it?
Tech Daily, yeah. TechDaily.com.
Yeah, okay. So Kim.com is getting his fortune back. It's like $16 million of assets, and probably maybe his bank accounts, but $16 million of assets plus untold whatever else in New Zealand. And so he may or may not still be extradited. I mean, he's not out of the woods yet. But he's getting his stuff back, and because he's getting his stuff back, he's going to be able to fund lawyers, and so that's sort of important. But because of that, the MPAA and the RIAA have collectively freaked and are now suing him.
This is awesome.
But in the stuff that they're suing him, in some of the documentation, it looks as though that they're saying that they themselves uploaded a lot of the stuff that they're now complaining about, as happened in another case that they were involved in. And so at worst, it looks like they themselves are guilty of the behavior they accuse him of, and at worst, it looks like that they're trying to frame him.
Yeah, that's what's so funny about all of this stuff. I think a lot of them just do not understand technology at all, so they accidentally let the world know that, like, well, we know that stuff was on his website because we put it there. See? It was obviously there. Maybe that's like a way simplification of what they were saying, but essentially that's what it looks like. It looks like they were putting it there and then looking for it and then trying to sue him because they know that copyrighted stuff was there because they put it there. What? My brain hurts so bad. So yeah.
That may not play out that way, but if that plays out that way, oh my God.
It'll be so freaking funny. And all this is the legend and we don't have any idea. Yeah, in case anybody can say. You know, the BMI is suing stuff as well. BMI is suing a bar in Cleveland, and this is something that happens all the time. They're asking for $1.5 million because a cover band got up on stage and played Jesse's Girl and Every Rose Has Its Thorn and Freebird and, you know, everything you hear when you go to a bar. It's like every every blues bar, every rock and roll bar has a cover band that plays like the exact same 15 songs. So they're getting sued for it. And, you know, they want all the different bars across the country or anybody that leaves a TV on or plays radio in their store to give them tons of money. The thing that bothers me about this is that 99.99% of all the money that they collect does not go to the artists who wrote the song. So the artists, they write their songs, they sign contracts. Companies like BMI and Universal Music or, you know, whatever music company go out there and just sue the hell out of anybody who tries to share this culture in a public place, and then they keep all the money for themselves. That really bothers me. Maybe if they were taking the money and giving it to the artists, but even then, I don't think the artists want this kind of thing to happen. It's like a really, really, you know, it's a good way for people to discover the music, especially for someone who's never heard, like, you know, Leonard Skinner or something. They're at a bar and they're like, that song's pretty cool. Let me Google it when I get home. Does anybody else know what that is? And the friend beside him is like, you idiot, that's Leonard Skinner. Here, you can buy it right here on my phone. And they buy it. Oh, my God.
Somebody should create a website that is where like artists and independent bands can upload all of their stuff for use in a public venue. And the requirement to that would be like, you know, the TV is scrolling like where the band is or how to get it. Or, you know, I guess that technology doesn't even matter because we get the song ID stuff now. Somebody can just hold up their phone and say, what is this? And the phone would say, oh, it's this.
Yeah.
So why don't we just do that? Just put an end to it. Just like, oh, it's licensed music. Oh, it's not allowed here because we can get music that other bands have done and it's completely fine because there's enough of it out there and we have the internet. So yeah, let's just solve that problem right now.
You know what? If anybody wants to use Zweihander, go ahead and use it. I don't care where you use it. You can use it in, well, I mean, like, don't go use it for a commercial production. I'm talking specifically about broadcasting in a public place like a bar or a coffee shop or something. Yeah, I don't know why anybody would want to listen to this stuff in a bar, but if you're running a nerd bar, you know, maybe you can put it on. I'm just saying I'm cool with it. So, for the record, and I think most of the artists who are on Bandcamp would also be pretty cool with it, but you never know. Let's talk about Bitcoin. The largest VC firm in the U.S. Is backing Bitcoin, and this article does not go into any of the specifics. We need more specificity, man. We didn't want to know what they're doing, but it does say that the largest VC firm in the U.S. Is playing around with Bitcoin. They're backing some VC startups and that sort of thing. A lot of venture capitalists are looking at Bitcoin. I don't know if that. I mean, like, the only thing that still worries me is the government. I know that they've classified it for the purposes of the IRS, but I don't know. I'm still. What could you, Wendell? Maybe we could just talk about this right now. Do you think that the government could just get weird and say that it's illegal? You know, do you think that's still a possibility, or do you think that's like too far? It's too. I guess it's too much everywhere.
No, I think they could still get weird, and they could effectively make it illegal, or they could make it so that, you know, every Bitcoin transaction carries a 15% tax or a 30% tax or something crazy like that. So it's like, I'm going to buy a toaster. Oh, and it's suddenly 30% more expensive. And I still have sales tax on top of that.
Yeah, maybe they'll do that because now since Bitcoin is not classified as a currency, how do they classify? They classified it the same way they would classify like a stock.
Property.
Property, yeah. It's now a property. So maybe they could be like, oh, you're going to be spending your property instead of your currency. So it's going to cost you an extra 30%. I can see something like that happening, but I don't know. Maybe it'll be the future around the world. And we also have some guys launching a Bitcoin satellite. Now, here's how this is going to work. They're going to throw Bitcoin satellites up there, and it's going to serve lots of different purposes. One, it'll be, I guess, redundancy. So in case something ever happens to the Bitcoin network, you know, we've got backup, man, and it's floating around in outer space, so they'll have to shoot missiles at it or something.
Don't put it past the U.S. government.
Let's get missiles and take down. Let's take out those Bitcoin satellites.
Meanwhile, there's someone inside the CIA watching saying, we don't ground-based missiles? No, we just point the laser at it. It's a laser type problem. What are you talking about?
It's like these guys are so 1980 talking about missiles when we've got lasers, particle cannons, and whatnot. Yeah, somewhere in the bowels of the CIA office. Anyway, it's going to cost about $2 million. They're going to throw these satellites up there. They could help with the... I don't know, there's a lot they could do here. You guys can just read the article if you want to, but it'll help distribute the blockchain or find alternative ways to distribute the blockchain data. I'm thinking that this can also be used possibly for transactions, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not, but who knows what you could do with it. If you've got a satellite up there that's delivering data.
I think it's about 50% publicity stunt, but that's just me.
$2 million publicity stunt. They'll probably raise the money, and the reason they'll probably raise the money is that a lot of the people who have been going on these SpaceX, like where they pay some ungodly amount of money, $600,000 or whatever, and they maybe it's cheaper than that, maybe it's like $100,000. I don't know, but they get to fly up into space and then back down, and a lot of those people are paying with Bitcoins. So a lot of the uber wealthy. And also the uber wealthy tech savvy people, a lot of those are into Bitcoin. And we just talked about venture capital firms getting into Bitcoin. So I think they'll get their $2 million. And I think it'll be a pretty cool publicity stunt, if nothing else. But, it's also good to have redundancy floating around in outer space. Also, Bitcoins. Now, millibitcoins may switch over to a new name. And there's a bunch of different names floating around out there. And the reason being for this is that Bitcoins are worth so much that it's kind of awkward using Bitcoins because you have to give someone like 0.0015 Bitcoins to pay for, like a T-shirt or something, or you have to give someone, it's weird, and it's a weird thing for people to think about. So the proposal here is to change, either the like millibitcoins, or they could be on 100th. So it's either going to be on 100th or a 1000th, but they're going to call them something different. It's not going to be millibitcoins or microbitcoins. And what was it called before? The 100 was the Satoshi. That was 1/100th of a Bitcoin. But they're thinking of either doing the 1/100th or the 1/1000th and calling it a bit. So that'd be almost like the equivalent of like $1 or something. That might be kind of interesting, or 50 cents if it's on the 1/1000th. But so $1 would be like bit. How many bits you got, man? A beer costs 4 bits. I could buy a beer for 4 bits. That made me feel all right, I guess. I don't know.
I was one of the people at the end of last year. I was one of the people that was like, by the end of 2014, Bitcoin will either be $100 or $10,000, because it was at about 1,000, I guess. And I don't think it's going to be either one of those things now, but it might be.
Well, it's kind of stayed in the middle. Earlier today, it was just over 500, but right now it's just below 500. It's like $496.10, according to this website here. But yeah, bits. What do you guys think of bits? I think it sounds kind of sci-fi, like something you'd read in, what's that guy's novel that wrote Neuromancer? Why am I crazy today? Probably because I didn't get enough sleep last night. But yeah, William Gibson. I could see that in a William Gibson novel, like he was almost out of bits,
It'll be funny walking around. It's like, wow, that guy's a kilobit air or a megabit air. I don't know.
Now you're just confusing everybody. What? All right, this is a follow-up article. We were talking about the secret salary deal. Well, apparently there's a class action lawsuit where a lot of the employees of the major companies out in Silicon Valley, like Google and Facebook was actually kind of not involved in this. Google and Apple and several others were apparently colluding to. They had like their anti-poaching thing, where a company for Google wasn't really allowed to call Apple's employees and offer them any money, and they were sharing, like the salaries, like this person makes this much money, so don't offer them more than that, and that sort of thing. Well, the employees decided, like, hey, you guys have robbed us. We could have been making more money, and you guys were doing something illegal. So we want damages, and they're asking for $3 billion in damages, which would go to a large pool of people.
And it looks like they're going to do it.
Yeah, it does look like they're going to do it. And one of the funny things is it seems like most of the other companies didn't really want to do this. They were kind of either coerced into it, or a lot of them were just point blank scared to death of Steve Jobs. They didn't want. It's like, don't yell at me again. God, the man is going to yell at me. People were afraid to piss off Steve Jobs because, one, he would yell at you, and that's an uncomfortable, I guess, for some people to be yelled at. But I think a lot of times they were just afraid that he would go out and do something malicious to undermine their business model, or I think they were genuinely afraid of him. But that's sort of what's coming across in this article here, is that a lot of them just did it because they just were scared of Steve Jobs, and he was just crazy about it. Well, some of the
Steve
emails
Jobs
are
was
hilarious.
Clinically insane, so
maybe that's why he was a genius. Geniuses are always insane like that. Yeah. Speaking of scams, this one's kind of funny. We're going to talk about ISPs just a little bit more to close this out, but it's totally different from what we talked about in the first of the show. Comcast bills were lowered $2.4 million by a couple of idiots who they got the login information from one of the guys. So these two idiots, one guy's named Richard Justin Spraggins, and the other guy was named Alston Buchanan. So what they did was, with that login information, they would just go to anybody's house and be like, listen, I can save you $400 on your cable bill, and it's only going to cost you like $75 or $125 or something like that. So you give them however much money, $75, $100 or whatever, and they log into the system and lower your cable bill for you. They were doing this like crazy. It ended up costing Comcast $2.4 million. It's kind of funny, but I mean, they got in trouble. They pled guilty.
Yeah,
they had
you can't do that.
they had $100,000 in cash on them at their place when the police came to arrest them. $100,000 in cash.
And Comcast didn't notice until one of their customers tipped them off to be like, "Hey, these guys are doing this," and it's like, "What?"
Yeah, it would still be going on if there wasn't some guy like, "You're not supposed to do that." Like, you know, hey, like they're probably hanging out. Like someone's like, "Oh, you got to call like Alston, or you got to call Richard. This guy here, he will save you money." And be like, "He'll do what? That doesn't sound right. I'm calling Comcast." That's probably what happened. And in fact, it is what happened. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have done it because it's bad.
Doesn't that basically mean that Comcast is basically rolling around in a station wagon full of cash, and they roll down the windows and there's just all this cash just leaching out onto the highway, and they have no idea what's going on? It's just bathtubs and bathtubs of cash.
Yeah, they didn't even notice it. $2.4 million gone. Nobody noticed it. But all they really said was like, "Listen, we're gonna let everyone keep their discounts, but we're gonna raise their prices right back up to where they should be next billing cycle." So they got to keep all the money. I mean, like the $2.4 million that was discounted, they kept it all. But the guys don't get to keep their money.
I don't even.
You know what gets me? They were logging in using a Comcast representative's credentials from a remote location, and that wasn't picked up. They were logging in from like their trailer or their barn or their house or their wherever the hell they were logging in from. They probably had a nicer house if they had $100,000 in cash, but they were logging in from a remote location, and that wasn't throwing on any red lights. Nothing was. Oh God, no red flags or whatever. I don't know. All right, what's next on the list here? Aereo. We should probably talk about Aereo just a little bit. I've got a Netflix article up here about Aereo. But
things are not going well
yeah.
for Aereo. Now, if you guys don't remember, Aereo is this service where if you live in the city or you live somewhere that you can actually pick up broadcast television, and somewhere that Aereo physically has an installation, they've leased the rooftops of buildings and deployed thousands and thousands of antennas and DVRs that you can lease, and then you can record broadcast television on the DVR that's on the space on the roof of the leased building. And so this is like as if they physically came to your house and put an antenna and a DVR physically in your house for you so that you could record and watch broadcast television, which is totally like a thing the public is meant to do. The FCC gives spectrum for free to broadcasters in exchange for public broadcasts.
Well, here's the thing that I think that really, really confuses the hell out of a lot of the courts. The fact that, number one, it's done through the internet, and that's always some kind of magic tomfoolery, hackery that scares the hell out of them. And number two, instead of having your own antenna on top of your own house, you're leasing an antenna, and therefore you are paying Aereo money. And for them, they're not seeing it as money to lease the actual equipment. They're seeing it as money to get those freely broadcasted signals into your house. And also, you can see here when one of the judges, I think it was John, I forgot his last name, but he said in one of the hearings, he was like, now, if we say that this is okay and you guys can do this, tomorrow, I bet we're just going to see HBO streaming for free over your services. And it was like, no, because HBO is not broadcast over the open air. You cannot pick up HBO with an antenna. But this is someone sitting on the Supreme Court that said, now you're just going to give everybody HBO for free. How can we allow that? So it does not look like it's going in the right direction. And again, a lot of this goes right back to our whole conversation about, people being afraid of technology. It's because people like this in power do not understand technology and make the wrong decisions. And that's exactly where this is headed, I think.
Well, it's kind of a weird double standard. I mean, the public is entitled to receive these broadcasts. Not everybody is fortunate enough to have a house that can receive these broadcasts, but the public is entitled to receive these broadcasts absent any sort of natural interference or anything like that. And so it's sort of a weird double standard, because it's like, oh, here's a way for me to receive this that to me is no different than just a really good antenna. It's a really good antenna. That's all it is. And that's allowed. That's a public thing. That is allowed in law. It is designed for the public to take advantage of. You don't have to pay for cable television to get broadcast television. It is, by the very definition, broadcast. But the other justices asked really strange and disturbing leading questions too, like, if we rule against you, how can we rule against you in such a way that we don't affect cloud services? Because Aereo rightly pointed out that if somebody uploads a television show that they have the right to a cloud service like Dropbox, how is it any different than what the justices have a problem with for what Aereo is doing? And it is a little different because it doesn't have the antenna and the DVR capability, but what if you had a TiVo that could push it up so that you could watch it from the cloud? There are services that do that today. Is that okay? And if that's okay, why is that okay, but not the other thing okay? A justice asked another question, which is, did you do the giant array of thousands of antennas just to do an end run around the law? And the way that's phrased is like, no, we're not doing an end run around the law. We're complying with the law. The law says that one person has to have their own antenna. They receive the signals on their own. You're not rebroadcasting. So they've engineered their system to not rebroadcast. My recording on my DVR is not necessarily exactly the same as your recording on your DVR. But one of the justices said that, oh, the difference here, the reason it didn't work in other cases because it's the same recording. But it's like, well, wait, now we have digital television. It's possible that a really good DVR is going to produce an exact digital copy of a television show so that my copy and your copy are identical. But that is the very definition of a digital television service. It is itself digital. It is perfectly reproducible. It is a signal designed to be, it's a signal designed with bitstream integrity in mind. So that they're asking these questions makes me think that it's going very badly for Aereo. And Aereo this is the VCR case of our time. The Supreme Court almost made VCRs illegal in a 5-4 ruling. VCRs were just barely legal. Aereo right now for our generation is as important as the VCR case was for generation gone by. They're not going to rule in Aereo's favor, and it's really, I don't think, and it's very unfortunate for our generation.
Well, I mean, even if they do rule in Aereo's favor, a lot of the broadcasters are saying that, you know what, if Aereo gets this, we're just going to pull all of our stuff. It's going to destroy lots of small affiliates, and then they're all really scared of TV being on the internet. That's really what this all boils down to. It's like, TV on the internet? What? Right now they've got TV shows a la carte on the internet that you can watch, but there's not too much going on when it comes to watching just regular TV shows on the internet as they are broadcast, when they're broadcast. There's a few things doing that, but something like this, it just scares them. And so they're actually threatening to pull the free over-the-air broadcast content. It's so weird.
But see, they were, in order to get the broadcast spectrum, they promised to provide free public broadcasts. So I really don't understand why the justices are not saying, well, wait a minute, you guys promised to do public good by public broadcast. Doesn't this bring your broadcasts to more of the public? Isn't that a good thing? Because, see, the cable industry, it wasn't exactly the same thing. I mean, the cable industry started the same way, but the cable industry also started inserting their own ads in things and sort of changing the signal and doing their own stuff. And that's when, for a long time, there was no royalty agreement or rebroadcast fees or anything like that. But ultimately, that did happen. But in Aereo's case, they are not altering anything. It is literally up to the individual. Aereo is not part of the equation as far as who watches what when or the ads or anything. You're literally renting an antenna and a DVR from Aereo. I don't understand why they don't see the difference there.
It's freaking sad. Something else that's kind of shocked me this week. HBO is demanding takedown of a whole bunch of Game of Thrones screenshots. ScreenCapped is a service that has a bunch of screen caps from different shows, and the whole purpose here is on screencap.net is for fans and that sort of thing to get those screen captures and create their own things or whatever, like you can see here in this picture. From that's not Game of Thrones, that's Lord of the Rings or whatever, but yeah, it's mainly for people who want to create collages or use the images or just have some fun with it. Anyway, they're demanding takedown of all the screen captures from Game of Thrones, and here's why this baffles me, because HBO has sort of embraced the pirate community. They've embraced the torrenting community, which is kind of astonishing. But if you just see that their demeanor about the whole situation, they're like, well, it's getting into more homes. It's making more people aware about it. They haven't taken any real action against any of it. But here they're taking action against screenshots, which is just, I don't understand why they're doing it. They have the legal right to do it, yes, but I don't know. It just seems a little odd to me.
Not cool, HBO, not cool.
Yeah. I mean, I can see them being a little bit more concerned about the fact that the Game of Thrones, almost every time a new episode comes out, it sets a new record for torrenting. But
can you imagine if you offered that on the internet for about $5, how much money you'd make, HBO?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Guess who is going to be streaming HBO shows? Amazon Prime users are soon going to have access to HBO shows very, very soon.
And it's an exclusive deal.
Yeah, which
Screw
I kind of
Netflix.
yeah, kind of think that's lame because let me give you guys a hint out there at HBO. And exclusive deals may be lucrative for you and for Amazon. However, people want to watch your content on their favorite platform, and that might be Netflix, that might be Hulu, that might be something. And by making it available on all those platforms, you're ensured that you're going to be able to get, first off, probably the maximum return on your investment, but also you're going to ensure that the public can watch it through legal means. So I don't know. That's my take on the whole thing. But yeah, it is pretty cool that it is going to be available somewhere other than HBO Go, which you have to have, or you have to get like a cable subscription to qualify for it. So that's really cool. It's told. I think if people are using Amazon Prime and they really want to cut the cord, a lot of people have been waiting to cut the cord because they really want access to HBO and all that sort of thing. This, I think, can enable a lot more people to cut the cord if they're willing to use Amazon Prime. But Amazon Prime is a fraction of the cost of cable, and a lot of the other interesting things that are on TV you can get on the internet anyway. So, yeah, it could be a good time for people to cut the cord.
I would definitely recommend everybody cut the cord because even if you have to deal with iTunes, the amount of money you save means you can afford a ridiculous amount of media, even on iTunes.
My only real gripe here, and we can talk about this in a different episode because we're running out of time, even though it's not really like a radio or TV show or whatever we have here, but is the fact that a lot of the services like Amazon Prime and like iTunes and that sort of thing, your libraries, it's kind of a gray area as to whether or not you own everything in your library. It's more like you're paying a monthly fee to rent a lot of these things. So I guess if you download things, but there's still DRM on it. If there's DRM on it, you don't own it. That's my take. Anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's really rough. I think Apple actually, I mean, not to give Apple any praise or anything, but I think Apple's done a reasonable job dealing with the whole DRM versus rights things over the years. Although they started out really bad historically, and they're still not great. But as far as like everybody else goes, they're less insane for the most part. But it took other companies leading the way with DRM-free MP3s to get iTunes on board. So it's not there's no company out there that's perfect, and DRM is definitely the devil. Because DRM only inconveniences legitimate customers. It does nothing to stop piracy.
What's that service? I believe it's Audible or something. I signed up for Audible a couple of years ago, and I know like a lot of other people on YouTube right now have been doing endorsement deals with Audible and that sort of thing. I haven't looked into it yet because I was so pissed off at it a couple of years ago. I had Audible, and you can only use Audible in a certain way. You can't put it on any device you want. At least back then you couldn't. So I was so pissed off that I canceled my service, and I was not able to legally get the stuff that I wanted because it had all this DRM, and I couldn't put it on the devices that I wanted to put it on. It just pissed me off. So if you guys out there know if Audible has changed, I do like audiobooks for like long car rides or plane trips or something like that. I think it's good. You can learn so much through audiobooks. Like you can get several college educations if you just always have an audiobook on. That is if you're listening to something educational. I mean, fiction's good too, but whatever. But let me know if any of you guys have Audible now. Can you guys can you get a DRM-free copy of the audiobook? I really would like to rejoin myself. I don't know. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. Yeah, we can call it a night.
Thanks to all you guys, tech support members. Be sure to check out the forum for that letter.
Yeah, that letter is very important. There it is on the screen. Head over there. There's going to be a link. Just click on the top link in the description, and it'll get you guys over there. So we'll see you in the next episode.